If you're thinking of picking this one up and if you want to listen to the audiobook, don't. My main issue with this book is that it was just like fucking boring. Penryn has a sister named something. Book Talk did me real dirty this year. Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about all of the worst books that I've read in 2022. Some of these books I don't necessarily hate, but they are, in my opinion, objectively bad despite still enjoying them. So I'll talk a little bit about each one, and also I'm going to be talking about the books that I DNF'd as well for whatever reason this year as well. I feel like I shouldn't have to say it, but if your favorite book is on this list, please don't take it offensively or personally. It's not on you, it's not personal. I just didn't vibe with them for whatever reason. First, I'll be talking about all of the books that I DNF'd. So I'm just gonna grab them randomly. So first off, I ended up DNFing Woman Eating by Claire Coda. And this one wasn't for any like particular or like big reason. I just kind of fell out of the mood for reading it. I kind of expected something a little bit different when I picked this up. This is a vampire novel, but more like a literary, calm sort of vampire novel, if that makes sense. It's not like a bad thing or anything, I just wasn't in the mood for it at the time. So let's see how far I got in. I got 37 pages in and I decided to put it down just for something else. I still plan on picking this one back up because when I first saw the synopsis, I was absolutely sold, and I'm still obsessed with the cover. So I'm still going to give this one a second chance. I just wasn't really vibing it at the time. That also goes for this book as well, which I must have removed the bookmark for this one. But that one is The Wisteria Society of Lady Scoundrels by India Holton. This one is the first in at least a duology. I don't know if there's going to be more books, but I know there's at least two kind of set in this world. This book is meant to be like a rom-com with kind of an emphasis on the com, and it's meant to be really funny and really just fun to read, but I didn't get too far into it. I'm pretty sure maybe 50 pages at the most, and I just don't think I was in the mood for like a historical sort of romance. It's like set in Victorian England, and I just wasn't in the mood for it. I thought I was in the mood for it because I watched Bridgerton this year and I was addicted, but I don't know, I wasn't in the mood for it. I think this is still something I'd really have fun reading, so I'm definitely going to pick it back up. The next one is a book that I also plan on picking back up as well, and that one is I Want to Die But I Want to Eat Tteokbokki by Baek Se-hee. This one is translated from Korean, I believe. Yeah, by Anton Her, and this is like part memoir, part journal entries, I suppose. It's basically a novel full of direct conversations by the author with her therapist, and it's about how she gets through her depression. And I got 37 pages in. I wasn't like hating it or anything like that. Again, I don't think I was in the mood for this. When I originally picked this one up, I thought I was in the mood for it, but it turns out I was in the mood for something a little bit more fun and entertaining, which, I mean, this is a memoir and literal diary entries and conversations with someone's psychiatrist about their mental health. So it's not like a fun time. Now, the next two are probably books that I'm probably gonna give up on. First off, I have I Kiss Shara Wheeler by Casey McQuiston. I was so hyped for this, and I was kind of alternating between reading the book and listening to the audiobook for this one. And like, again, I don't know whether I just wasn't in the mood for this or whether I've really stepped away from YA contemporary, which I know I have, but I was just so excited for Casey McQuiston's next book because I love Casey McQuiston's writing and I've loved the other books that they've written, but this one, I don't know, like there was just something about it. I wasn't vibing with it at all. I got 127 pages in before I just kind of stopped. I think I literally stopped in the middle of a chapter as well. And there just wasn't enough keeping me going. Like, there was a little bit of a mystery kind of simmering there, but honestly, I was pretty bored while reading this. I don't know if I'm going to give it a second chance, which I'm really sad about because I literally have 2 copies of this book because I was so hyped for it and I was so convinced I was going to love this. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. And then finally, I technically did a whole reading vlog on this book and it just wasn't my fave. It was so bad. Oh, okay. So this one, I technically skimmed the rest of it. So I'm still considering it a DNF because I didn't actively read the entire book, but I did skim like the last third of the book. And I was actively reading like the first 2/3. But that one is Twisted Love by Anna Huang. And this is the first book in the Twisted series. Apparently the series gets really good after this book, but honestly I couldn't do it. I had seen so much hype everywhere about this book. I mean, especially on Book Talk, but just kind of in general, that I thought I'd really love this and that it would at least be an entertaining time. But the writing... If you're thinking of picking this one up and if you want to listen to the audiobook, don't. Because the audiobook is fucking terrible. The audiobook literally has like the same kind of voice as the character from Duke Nukem, which I couldn't stop laughing. Half the dialogue in this just made me laugh, and not in like a positive way. It wasn't supposed to make me laugh, but the writing was just that ridiculous. And like the love interest, he was not sexy, like in the slightest. When you read about him, he did not seem attractive at all. And like, you know, he's like a bad boy and he's like overprotective and like jealous and stuff, and he's super rich. But I don't know, just the things he says, it was so funny. And then the main girl character, I didn't really give a shit about her from what I remember. There's like a whole bunch of like family trauma happening with both of them as well, and it was just, yeah. This one was really, really bad. And even like the plot twist that I ended up reading or skim reading towards the end as well, like that couldn't even get me to pick the book back up properly because I didn't care. I'll leave my full thoughts in my vlog up here if you want to go check it out, because I go into a little bit more detail about my thoughts and feelings with this book. So let's get into my worst books of 2022. These books are in no real particular order except for maybe 1 or 2 of them, which are like my least favorite of the year. But the first one I'm going to be talking about is actually my first read of 2022, which made me really sad, and that is Vox by Christina Delcher. This one was 2 out of 5 stars, and I think 2 might have been a little bit generous. It's more like a 1.5. This one I'd heard so many good things about, and I was so excited for this. I'd had it on my shelf for ages. In this world, women are limited to speaking 100 words a day. Otherwise, they get a jolt of electricity and electric shock if they go over that word limit, and the shock gets worse and worse the more words they speak. And so they really have to be careful with what they say and how they communicate. Obviously, it's a really sexist government. There's like a revolution that they end up doing in this book, and it's really poorly executed. And this one just felt very on the nose as well. It was very, very white feminism. It was just so poorly executed. The main white woman is like having sex with her like Spanish co-worker or something, and it feels really like gross to read about throughout this. Like I laughed during Twisted Love, I found myself also laughing throughout this in really inappropriate parts just because the writing was that bad. So oh my god, I just dropped it. So yeah, don't recommend. Next up, I actually have a 3-star book, but I am adding this on my worst books of 2022 just because it's like probably my most disappointing read of this year. That book is My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Otessa Moshfegh, and I was so hyped for this. I was convinced I was gonna love it as well, and I'd seen it all over TikTok, I'd seen it all over Instagram, Twitter, booktube, like everywhere. This book is sort of like the peak of the sad girl, unhinged woman sort of book, which I enjoy. And so I thought I would enjoy this, and I didn't hate it, but I didn't like it. I enjoyed the second half more than I enjoyed the first half. It's basically about this woman who doesn't have a name. It's set in the year 2000, and she decides she's so depressed that she's going to literally sleep for a year. She still gets up to eat and have nutrients and do stuff like that, but she literally sleeps for the rest of the year. And she does this by going to a really dodgy psych who gives her really dodgy drugs, and she just knocks herself out and goes to sleep. On one hand, I don't know why I was so surprised that this wasn't an entertaining or like interesting book to read about, considering the main character's motivations are literally to just sleep for the entire year. But I thought we'd get some more inner monologue. I thought we'd get some more kind of conversation or something happening in this book, and we just didn't. I know the point of this book is that, like, if you're depressed, you find it really hard to even do anything and do things as basic as getting up or showering or anything like that. And I get that. That's like not my main issue with this book. My main issue with this book is that it was just like fucking boring. The ending tried to be shocking but ended up feeling really lackluster, and I feel like that sort of encompasses the whole book. The next book that I'm including on this list is actually one that I really love, but they're objectively bad. But I love them and they entertain me so much and I have so much fun reading them. But that is the Ice Planet Barbarian series by Ruby Dixon. You've probably seen this book around. This one was huge for a while, and it's basically about a group of women who are kidnapped and abducted from Earth by little green alien men, and then they crash on an ice planet, and then they all end up getting Stockholm syndrome and end up falling in love and having babies with these giant blue alien men. There is a lot of questionable consent going on in this book and the rest of the books, and there's a lot of questionable stuff in general happening in here. Half of it is just kind of smart, but I am so entertained by these and like the characters, because it's a big group of characters by the end, and each book kind of delves into a different couple, and what can I say? I love it. I'm addicted to this series. Look up trigger warnings as well, maybe especially for this first book, because there's a lot that happens, and there is, I can't remember whether it is implied or explicit on page, but there is a rape scene like in the first 20 pages. It's not very long. I'm pretty sure it's like maybe a page or it's just implied, but just be aware of stuff like that in this book. Yeah, one of the worst books I've ever read, but also like I find so much entertainment from this series. The next book I have is another book I read for a book talk video, which book talk did me real dirty this year. And this next book I also read for a video. I think it was in the same video as Twisted Love, if you want to go check it out. And again, I'll leave it up here. But that book is Gild by Raven Kennedy. This is the first book in a series. I rated this one 2 out of 5 stars. This was absolutely everywhere on Book Talk for a while. It's about the story of King Midas, who everything he touches turns to gold, and he has a prisoner who has golden skin. She is kept in a golden cage and lives with King Midas and is his sort of pet, and there's other pets as well, but she's the only golden one. She's special, and she kind of ends up realizing that being in this kind of golden prison, even if she gets all of the best stuff out of being a sex slave, it's still not a good thing. Yeah, anyway, I was really bored for a lot of this, I'm not gonna lie. Like, the first half of this, from what I remember, is literally just in the one room, and she describes being trapped in a cage, and it's quite sad. It's very fucked up, but it's not, it wasn't good. It was really, really boring. It only got entertaining in maybe the last 60 pages or so. And even in those last 60 pages, they were very questionable and not great. The writing, again, was not great in this. And also, This was all over BookTok as a really like smutty, like sexy fantasy. There was like nothing in here. There was nothing sexy about this. It was very much world building. There might be more sexy smutty stuff in the later books, but I don't know if I'm gonna read the later books. Next up is a book that I thankfully don't own and didn't buy, and that is Things We Lost in the Fire by Mariana Enriquez, and was translated by Megan McDowell. I think the author is from Argentina. This is a collection of short stories about women and their experiences in modern day Argentina, and I thought I would really like this, and I really wanted to like this. I'm not sure whether it was due to the translation or not, but the first story in this used a really outdated term for trans people, not just like once, it was like over and over and over and over again, and it just made me feel very uncomfortable. And then, if that weren't bad enough, the rest of the stories were just really boring. I don't mind an open ending for a story or for a book, and a lot of the time I like those stories, but a lot of these stories were really boring, and literally like the second they started to get interesting or entertaining, it felt like it would just finish mid-sentence and then we'd move on to the next one, and it just, nothing ever felt, I don't want to say complete, because again, I don't mind open endings, but it didn't feel like there was a story there. All of these stories didn't feel like they had open endings. They feel like they just ended mid-sentence, and it just felt like a whole kind of bunch of nothing. And I'm really sad because I feel like it had the potential to be really interesting. The next book is one that I was so excited for, and I'm so disappointed by, because I really wanted to love it, and I thought I would love it, because you know how with a lot of romance books, a lot of them have like a gimmick, or the main character's like really into something, but it's fun and it's just kind of like part of their personality, and it like kind of bleeds into other parts in the book in a really fun way. I feel like a lot of romance does that, and a lot of it does it well. I don't know whether it was a me problem or whether it was the book's problem, but this book, Love in the Time of Serial Killers by Alicia Thompson, this one was not very good for me personally. I think I gave it 2.5 out of 5 stars. It was okay. I was really excited about this because it's about Phoebe, who moves to her old town where she grew up in, and she's writing her dissertation in true crime because she really loves true crime. So Phoebe ends up moving into her old house, and she suspects that her neighbor is a serial killer. And that really intrigued me. I thought that sounds really cool and really fun. And obviously I knew they would fall in love, but I thought the journey would be a little bit more entertaining, but it wasn't. And like I said, I think this is definitely a me problem, because I'm not a true crime girly at all. I don't really care for it. I'm not really into it. This book had a lot of discussions about true crime and how a lot of society tends to romanticize it as well, and how they interact with true crime, which was interesting, but they were kind of just one-off sentences or one-off paragraphs here and there, and the rest of it was just kind of really on the back burner. Like, it really was just about her dissertation. I didn't end up caring for the main romantic pairing in this at all. I wasn't really attached to her or the love interest, who is Sam. I forgot his name. And like, yeah, again, like, I remember almost nothing about their relationship. I remember liking her brother's relationship more than hers, which is concerning because they are a side couple and not the main couple. But I just wasn't into the main couple in this book at all, which I feel like for a romance book I should be. The next book I am even more disappointed in, because this was probably one of my most anticipated reads of this year, because I loved the first book so much. That book is The American Roommate Experiment by Elena Armas. I personally loved The Spanish Love Deception. I know a lot of people didn't like it, but I loved it so much. I gave that one 5 out of 5 stars. I had so much fun reading it. I loved the couple. I loved Aaron. I loved Lena. It made me cry. It made me laugh. But this one, I was just bored. This one is sort of like a sequel or spin-off to The Spanish Love Deception, and it follows the best friend Rosie and Lena's cousin Lucas. I've already forgotten his name and I read it like last week. They end up accidentally being roommates because they both need a place to stay when they're in New York, because something happened with Rosie's apartment and Lucas was staying at Lena's house anyway, so they end up kind of being roommates together there. That did bring up some cute scenes, like especially with Lucas cooking and stuff like that, and I did like Lucas, but he wasn't very memorable as a love interest. I don't know, like I feel like this has so many things that I would like in a romance book, but I did find myself just really bored. I was just kind of reading and listening to it because I listened to the audiobook alongside reading it physically as well. I found reading this just a bit of a chore, and I was just kind of reading it to see if it would get better or whether something else would happen, and I was just reading it just to finish it essentially. I just wish it was a little more entertaining, and the third act breakup was like so predictable, and I know there's lots of third act breakups, but you could see this one coming from like the first chapter. Like you knew it was gonna happen, and so it was just really predictable and not in a good way like other romance books are. It was just boring. Next up on my list is actually a reread that I did this year, and that was for the Breath of the Wild-a-thon, and I was really excited about reading this and I was so disappointed by the end, and that is Angelfall by Susan E. Some of you might remember this if you've been in the book community for a while, because this was a angel book in kind of like the height of the paranormal genre, and it did not hold up well at all. It is set in a post-apocalyptic world where angels have descended upon Earth, and angels are really shit, by the way. They're not good, and they use humans, they abuse humans, and the main character Penryn has a sister named something, and she's kidnapped by the angels, and her mum also I think has schizophrenia, and it made me very uncomfortable reading this because her mum's schizophrenia was very much just used as a way to say, oh look how hard my life is, my mum's crazy, and it just seemed really insensitive and I didn't like it. It made me feel uncomfortable. There's also the little part at the end where magic ends up curing a disability, and it just felt very bad overall regarding that. I remember when I first read this book, it was like 7 or 8 years ago now, and I was obsessed with it. It was so much fun. It's very, very action-packed. It's like go, go, go. Like it does not stop, which is fine. It's very fast-paced. It's not like I don't like fast-paced books. I like fast-paced books, but there's no character development in here at all. Like we do not get any motivations. We don't get any relationship development or kind of insight into Penryn's relationship with her sister and why she cares so much, apart from the fact that she's her 7-year-old sister. Like we don't get any of that, and I really wish we got more of an insight into the characters, because I feel like that would have made this book a lot better than what it was. But it really was just like a series of fast-paced action events. While it was easy to read, you weren't attached to any of the characters. I was very much disappointed by my reread of this, and I'm really sad because I really, really have fond memories of reading this series, and now it's kind of tarnished because I reread it. So now I don't want to reread anything ever again. Sorry for a slightly different angle maybe. My battery died. But the last book on this list is one that I technically already talked about, and it's my least favorite of the year, and that is Twisted Love. So I won't go into too much more detail about this because I literally just talked about it in this video already at the start, but it's still so bad. This was not good. And if you really think that I should read book 2 because apparently it's way better than this one, maybe I'll do it. Maybe I'll try the other books in the series next year maybe, but I don't know if I can trust anyone anymore. This book was just awful. It had like no redeeming qualities at all. It was ridiculous and not in a fun way. I didn't like the writing. It's just a lot wrong with this book. They are all of the books that I did not enjoy in 2022. Well, there's more books that I didn't enjoy in 2022, but they are the worst ones that I read in 2022, and also my DNFs for various reasons. But that is about it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know down below what your worst book of 2022 is, or whether you enjoyed any of these and for what reasons, because I'd love to hear it. Because obviously I didn't like a lot of these, but I can see a lot of people liking a lot of these, and also a lot of these I read because a lot of people loved them and they were super hyped, so I fully expected me to also enjoy it, because who am I to say that I won't like something just because it's hyped. That is it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a fantastic day or night wherever you are, and yeah, I'll see you all next time for a new video. Bye.